Sheikh Abdul Rahman Bukatir. He's more popularly known in Kerala as Sharjah Sheikh, of course, which is a drink.
Not to be confused with the milkshake, but yes, continue. Go on.
Yeah.
Wait, there's a milkshake called Sharjah Shake?
Yes.
Dude, wow.
Wow.
Kaustubh,
young, too
offline
young, bro.
after this call. Yeah, offline after this call.
TV umpire to director, we have a player review. Can we rock and roll, please?
Welcome to episode 8 of Bits and Pieces, the cricket podcast about everything except any expertise in cricket. Once again, we have a panel, and our panel is comprised of completely new people. Let's start with London. Whenever I tell people that I am from Abu Dhabi and I went and studied in Trichy, followed by a brief career in consulting and then journalism, people generally turn to me and say, then you must be Sidin Vadukut. I say yes. And that is why he gets all those inappropriate DMs in his Twitter. Joining us all the way from London with some great expertise in cricket, which mostly is about some hilarious blog posts and some amazing stuff on Cricinfo. Here is Sidin Vadukut.
Hello, bits and pieces. Hi, PGK. Thank you for having me. Very nice introduction, by the way. You've deftly covered up the fact that I have had nothing to do with cricket for approximately 10 years at this point.
Today's episode is truly transcontinental because Sidin joins us from the home of cricket in London. Till now, we have had people from Australia, we have had people from India. And speaking of Trichy, please say hello to Srinath Sripath. Srinath is the only person in this podcast, actually one of two people in this podcast, who knows a little bit about cricket. He also has the distinction of attending the second best engineering college on the Trichy-Tanjavur highway.
I didn't realize SASTRA would ever make an appearance on this podcast, PGK, but thanks for the intro. Sidin's joining from the home of cricket. I'm joining from the home of Sidin in Trichy.
That's a little bit like saying the second best political party in China. But yes, let's carry on.
Now, from Trichy, we jump across the border. And here is Tony. You can't see Tony, but Tony is smiling really widely because Sanju Samson had a phenomenal day yesterday. Tony joins us from Bombay, and Tony is here to support all his Malayali brethren and, of course, talk a little bit about cricket. Say hi, Tony.
Hi.
And rounding off this panel today is Kaustubh. Kaustubh joins us from Bombay, and he's surrounded by enthusiastic idli sellers, and he's the other person who does some great work on cricket professionally, apart from the rest of us. You can DM him too, because he has magical fingers that's responsible for the beautiful edits of this podcast. So say hi, Kaustubh.
Hi all. I was just telling Srinath the other day, like my Trichy connection is that my maternal hometown is from Trichy, and like I visited once in 2001 because my folks thought it would be nice to take me to Parni and have me cosplay as Colina, the referee. So I was completely tortured for 3 months, and that was my time in Trichy. That was my only time in the year 2001.
Incidentally, 2001 is also the time that Sidin must have just left Trichy, leaving behind his 4 years of trauma, and that was the year that I was entering Trichy, ready to begin my 4 years of trauma.
You mentioned Trichy and Idli. Can I just take a segue away from cricket to bring up my Trichy memory, which is basically that Trichy is obviously not known for great South Indian food, I'm guessing. So I went for like a guest lecture in IIM Trichy, which happened to be on the NIT Trichy campus. And then the prof who invited me is like, good, you're here. So after class, he's like, there's this new Thai restaurant that's launched. I've been wanting to try it out for a while. I'm like, wow, okay. I thought Trichy was like a small town. There's a Thai restaurant. Chalo, let's go try it out. And we reach there, and the menu is exclusively idli and dosa. And this guy's like, it's a Thai
Also,
restaurant.
Thai Pongal.
Yeah, it's a Thai restaurant. Why do you have idli and vada? And basically the guy said, that's the name of the restaurant. Thai means mother in Tamil, obviously. So that was my, basic introduction to Trichy, as it were, and the Thai restaurant there.
Also, I don't know if Sidin knows this, but IIM Trichy, the first campus that it had was actually the NIT Trichy library. That was their campus, literally. They took the library and said, this is the IIM Trichy.
I'm happy that Trichy continues to specialize in disappointing people, from restaurants to actually joining an IIM. I once went with a friend. I remember this was the day Air Force One came out. So this is literally in another century. And I went out with a friend to eat some food, and at one of those roadside places in Trichy near the bus stand. And we had idli and mutton curry or something like that. And then a bunch of very burly guys came around us and said, it's 90 rupees per person. And we just paid them 90 rupees per person. And then we were so depressed because they essentially swindled us. So to get over it, we actually went and saw Air Force One again. So one of the more valiant things I've done in my life is see 2 shows of Air Force One sandwiched around idli with mutton curry. Trichy will always have its way with you.
As you can see, 2 of our panelists from the state of Kerala, 2 of our panelists from the wonderful state of Tamil Nadu, and quite appropriately, there is me sandwiched in the middle, just like KL Rahul when he's stuck in the middle in a T20 game. This is me, I'm Praveen Gopal Krishnan, and we are rounding off this panel. So right now, India is playing West Indies.
Sri Lanka.
Sri Lanka.
They just finished playing West Indies. Wow, it just looks like one continuous stretch. It's basically they just finished playing West Indies and now they're playing Sri Lanka. And it looks like they played 3 T20s with West Indies, 3 ODIs with West Indies. You can't even keep track anymore. It's just a blur of just beating. And now it's Sri Lanka team has started and it looks like another blur of beating has just begun. Is anyone watching this game? Do you want to just quickly talk about it for like 5 to 10 minutes?
5 to 10 minutes is longer than any of us have watched these games. Sorry, Sri Lanka.
Longer than Sri Lanka literally plays the game.
I think Sidin will feel right at home, right? He said he's back at cricket 10 years later, just like any other day India playing Sri Lanka today. There's nothing that's changed at all in over a decade now.
Back when I used to write for Cricinfo, 10% of all cricket was the Sri Lankan national anthem. Of all cricket. You just randomly do a sample size and it's somebody singing the Sri Lankan national anthem. It's just weird.
Which has quite a bit of Namo in it. So, yeah. Whatever. Quickly moving on. But I think one of the fascinating things about this series is that Sri Lanka was literally like 2 days before this playing a series in Australia. And I remember when like Concorde was first introduced, there was some funda wherein you could take a flight from New York to London and arrive before you left or some weird nonsense like that. I think that's what Sri Lanka is trying to do, right? They're basically like universal whipping boys whenever there's a requirement to up team morale, with Australia losing Justin Langer or India's whole saga with Kohli Shastri. They just like summoned at the snap of a thumb and they're there to be beaten. So I think today is the 3rd game, but already like and that too back to back, right? So they've played essentially 4 T20s in less than a week, with a major sort of transcontinental flight in between. So kudos to Sri Lanka.
I wonder if Sri Lanka will be the first team to lose 2 series in the same week. I wonder if that's ever happened before. If anyone has lost 2 completely different series against 2 completely different countries in the same week.
In different continents.
It's truly remarkable, no? I mean, I wonder if there's a football team like that, where you can just invite them. They're generally a high-quality football team, but you can defeat them if you need a brief boost of morale,
This was probably planned 8-9 months ago or a year ago. So was all this known that Langer will leave? That Kohli Shastri saga will happen? Like, was all this known like 9 months beforehand? And like, this is when that this series was penciled in at that time, like before we knew all this was going to happen. So I don't know who's controlling cricket.
I have my doubts it was penciled in that early. Remember when Tendulkar had to retire? They just very quickly called West Indies over. They probably were sitting outside the airport and they said, listen, all of you just get into this bus. Please come now. We have to play Tendulkar's last test match. And they all showed up just very, very quickly. It was a very short notice. So I can see this happening at very short notice.
But I think the West Indies series again this time was summoned fairly quickly, right? I guess Sri Lanka is the one that's been chalked in for a longer period of time.
This whole pandemic situation, right? Like they've not had a home season for more than 18 months now. So whoever fits in gets sandwiched between the away leg and the IPL, pretty much. That's what's happening now. It's just passing time to hit the IPL effectively.
The Ranji is going on right now. And the Ranji is fairly interesting because you have a lot of teams battling it out and many people are coming back in form. But there is a video that just popped up and it is about this wonderfully named player. His name is Eden Appleton. And it's spelled EDENAPPLETOM. That's his name. And he has a video where he's explaining why he's called Eden Apple Tom, or rather trying to explain why he does not know why his name is called Eden Apple Tom. And Eden is pronounced Eden. So he's from Kerala. He's a Malayali. And the first thing that struck me when I saw this really strange name was this really brilliant and fairly underrated post that Sidin had written several years back. And he had this beautiful hypothesis back then that in order to be a successful cricketer in India, you cannot have a common name. Your name has to be unusual. Sidin, I'm going to throw it to you and say, can you just tell us a little bit more about it?
So there was a period, I think between 2008 and maybe for 3 or 4 years, I used to write a column for Cricinfo. So they called me up and said, look, how much do you know cricket? I said, virtually nothing. So they're like, excellent. Can you write a column for us? Because that'd be substantially better than the other columnists we already have. And I just spent, and the thing is, I used to consume a lot of cricket, but not very mindfully. And then I said, okay, I need to really consume this thing, watch a lot of cricket, but watch it in the least reverential way possible, right? And then you start noticing patterns and stuff. For example, the overwriting of cricket articles. Every long form cricket article must be put into a cannon and shot into the sun, right? I mean, if you actually sit down and read it. Similarly, the other thing I noticed was how Indian cricketers, and not just Indian cricketers, if you generally look at cricketers, for some bizarre reason, how many Prashants have played for India? You know what I mean? Like how many, like Anil Kumar? No, they'll take Anil, but then add a Kumble. And do you know any other Kumbles? I don't know any other Kumbles. Similarly, there were two Tendulkars, right? There was Sachin Tendulkar, and there was the lady who used to come in the advertisements. There's another Tendulkar. And I would just like, man, I just do not know anybody else who has the surnames that the vast majority of Indian international cricketers had. And my theory remains is that if your name is like, A. Srinivasan, you'd probably become an administrator. You know what I mean? There is no chance that you're going to become an international cricketer for India. So Eden Apple Tom, moment of silence for his childhood. He is bang on. I have a feeling. The one person who really surprised me is Rohit Sharma.
Yes.
Because as soon as Rohit Sharma came on the scene, I was like, there is no way somebody called Rohit Sharma can make it. Some might argue there is still no way that somebody called Rohit Sharma will make it in international cricket. But I've been truly surprised at his success. There has to be. I mean, look at Salil Ankola. How many other Ankolas do you guys know? Hands up. Do you know other Ankola? There is no other Ankola. Atul Bedade. How many bloody other Bedades are there? There are no other Bedades, right? How many Gavaskars? How many other Gavaskars are there who did not come from the original Gavaskar? Gavaskar, whatever, right?
The only person who broke the mold was Sanjay Manjrekar, which is where you also sort of put your hands up.
Eden Apple Tom. I have theories for why his name is Eden Apple Tom. Have bright future, extremely bright future. Now, if he can play a little bit of good cricket, I think he'll do well.
He just needs to play a little bit of good cricket. It's like that's like he's already got the door in. Like it's like someone like Washington Sundar, for example. Like not a day goes by when you don't think about what he's up to.
Exactly. What are you? Are you a tourism campaign? Are you a human being? What are you, right? I mean, yeah, man. And the thing is, if you're a bowler, right? What is Eden? What is his Eden Apple Tom? Is he like batsman? Is he bowler? Is he all rounder? What is
I believe he's a bowler. He's a seamer. Yeah, he's a seamer.
Right? Can you imagine you're a cricketer, right? And you're a batsman. You're standing there, and the announcer says, "Okay, left arm around medium Pavali and whatever medium is Eden Apple," and you're like, "I cannot do this. I just cannot do it." So I think it's a strategic move. I mean, if India's smart, our Moneyball should be to just pick Indians who have weird names.
If nothing else, you'll have their name, right? I was thinking about Napoleon Einstein today.
Oof.
The guy didn't do much
That's
at
just
senior
too much
level.
on the nose. That's when you
yeah.
overachieve.
He's
the brief.
named to make it big.
Actually, it's Eden Apple Tom, right?
Damn, we have been mispronouncing his name and making fun of him for like 10 minutes.
No,
But okay,
that's
yeah.
fine. Like I said just before we started recording, in Kerala I'm known as Tony, but I realized 18 years after I was born that I was pronouncing my name incorrectly and it's supposed to be Tony. So I go by both depending on where I am. So Eden Apple Tom, as he's called in Kerala, had a very strange explanation for his name. But two things. One, he's 16 years old. Two, he's a Malayali. So there's lots of trauma there. But apparently what he was trying to say was that his granddad actually named his dad Apple Tom Philip. Right. So, and he was like a professional volleyball player for Kerala. And so he was named Apple. So he thought, what is like a cool add on to that? How can I make this joke longer? So he named his son Eden Apple or Eden Apple, the forbidden fruit. But the connect to all of this is basically Eden Apple Tom, like some of you guys, grew up in Sharjah. And he was there till his 7th grade or something, till he came back to Kerala and then started playing. So, yeah, there you go. Malayalis, Sharjah, cricket, and weird names.
Which brings us back to this episode. Well done.
Yeah, it's all Venn diagrams intersecting. This like matching together.
Yeah,
So
it's all
minimum-
connected. I think, like you said, there is some like time machine which has already worked all of these results out. Now we're just like re-deriving everything again and again.
Perhaps at least for me and for Sidin, given that we grew up there, we have very distinct memories associated with Sharjah, which I think we'll get into. But before that, I thought I'll just ask Tony, Kaustubh and Srinath, given that you were, in a sense, on the outside, what was your perception of matches at Sharjah? How did you look at them? Did you look at it as like a time pass thing? Were you like very mystified by it? Did you think it as a contest that was like amazing? What was your experiences of watching Sharjah matches on the outside?
I guess all of us have the same first memory, which is going to be Desert Storm and Tony Craig and I guess Mark Mascarenas for some reason. And
Wow,
like,
I'm really surprised because your first memory is Desert Storm, which is like 1998, which is almost like the tail end of my Sharjah memory.
but basically, Sharjah cricket started with this guy.
Abdul Rahman Bukatir.
Yeah,
Abdul Rahman Bukatir.
Abdul Rahman Bukatir or Sheikh Abdul Rahman Bukatir. He's more popularly known in Kerala as Sharjah Sheikh, of course, which is a drink.
Not to be confused with the milkshake, but yes, continue. Go on.
Yeah.
Wait, there's a milkshake called Sharjah Shake.
Yes.
Dude, wow.
Wow.
Kaustubh,
Too young,
offline
bro.
after this call. Yeah, offline after this call.
Yeah, but Sharjah was like a one of curiosity, like one of the many tri-series tournaments that used to happen. And Desert Storm again, there was another team which was New Zealand, which you keep forgetting. But I think was that also the place where either Jayasurya or Saeed Anwar just like blew us away completely. So I think I've repressed a lot of the bad memories, and one of the only memories that I do have is of Desert Storm and Sharjah. And now I actively don't look at people playing in Sharjah because it's such a small ground.
For me, Desert Storm one thing because I remember watching that on TV. But there are memories of it that I have been told, but I don't remember like either witnessing or like seeing it happen or something. Like there's only one file photo of like Dawood Ibrahim, for example. I think that was when he was watching one game at Sharjah. And whenever there is any match fixing scandal whenever it blew up, right? I think late 90s, early 2000 something. The only thing that kept playing on loop on TV because they had no other footage was this clip from him watching a game there. So Desert Storm I remember obviously, but the only other thing vividly that I remember of Sharjah apart from Tevatia's Heroics 2 years ago is this clip of like those huge 80s type glasses and someone just going, bro, he did match fixing. Like that's about it.
You know, the interesting thing about that is that when Anurag Kashyap made Black Friday, the actor who was playing Dawood Ibrahim, he actually had no reference on how Dawood Ibrahim would walk, talk, his mannerisms, etc. So what he would do is he would watch entire clips of Sharjah games just to get a sense of how he is as a person, and he would base his character on him. That's it.
SD clips in like what 180p, 144p or whatever, which is like shot in God knows what potato camera. That's what he used to like base his entire character off.
But really cool. I think just before this episode, I was reading some of Sidin's old stuff, and one of it was about how to talk about cricket like an expert without knowing anything. And one of the points is basically about back in the day in Sharjah, you remember that innings? And basically he rounds it off by saying that nobody remembers shit about what happens in Sharjah except for Desert Storm, and we've proven that right. Those are the only two innings anyone ever remembers. But seriously, the two things I remember, like the abiding memories apart from that, are India getting trashed by Pakistan left, right, center at every given chance, and of course Jayasurya's 189 and the 54 all out that followed. Like I think those are the two sort of lasting memories of Sharjah. Everything else is a blur. Like all the IPL games since, nobody cares. Like nobody remembers even the next morning what happened in Sharjah. It's just like I don't know. It's like a blur of 20-year-long memories, basically.
I just realized a generational shift between me and Tony and Kaustubh and so on. Because my memories of Sharjah actually start in 1985. I have very clear memories of the Rothmans Cup tournament,
Oh, right.
which
Ravi
is
Shastri.
the tournament that happened, I think, a year after the World Cup. I
Yes.
think, in 1984. And the
Yes.
years between 85 and 90 are, for me, very, very important years because the Football World Cup happened in 1990 that UAE qualified for. I have no memory of the 86 World Cup. I have very little memory of that. I vaguely remember Dad talking about Maradona and the hand of God and so on. But UAE qualified for the 90 World Cup. And from 1985 to 1990, there was an unbelievable amount of cricket in Sharjah. I don't think people remember that much. There was the Rothmans Cup, there was an Australasia Cup, there was a Sharjah Cup. I think they literally had at least one tournament every year in Sharjah. And I have very clear memories of the Rothmans Cup. And I mean, everyone kind of thought India's World Cup victory in 1984 was a fluke. 83 was a fluke. I mean, I was like 5, 6 years old, but I remember my dad would be like, man, there's no chance we can beat the West Indies. I mean, the West Indies were just considered unbeatable. And I have one of my earliest cricket memories is the local newspapers would do a 4-page supplement when the cricket happened in Sharjah. And they decided to take a photo of the West Indies team in their hotel in Sharjah, which was today it is widely known as the girls' college class photo, which is they all sit on one step going up and they take a photo, right? You know that photo. They all take either they take it from the front or they take it from the side. They convinced all the West Indies players to stand on one step each on the staircase in the hotel. And the staircase looked like they were standing in front of this little Lego toy, right? Because these guys are huge. I remember looking at it and telling my dad, and I was what, 5, 6 years old, telling him, how can any human being beat them in anything? Right? They were big, they were strong, and obviously India went into the Rothmans Cup and got slaughtered. Right? India got demolished, and India lost to Pakistan. India did very badly, I remember, in that 85. And then the next year, and this some of you might remember, there was a Australasia Cup, and in the final, Miandad hit Chetan Sharma for a six,
Oh,
and Pakistan needed, I think, 5 or 6 runs to win off the last ball. Chetan Sharma tried a Yorker, and Miandad slammed him out. I saw that live. And for me, I did not know
Sorry,
cricket
live in the
existed
stadium
before.
or live on television?
Live on television. And
Okay.
it sounds weird. Watching live on television was actually harder than watching live in Sharjah at that point. Because if you wanted to watch a cricket tournament in Sharjah, I think till the late 80s, early 90s, you always got your ticket from one restaurant in Dubai called Sindh Punjab Restaurant.
Yes.
Okay.
Absolutely.
You went to Sindh Punjab Restaurant. It was this weird genuinely Indo-Pakistani. In the sense it was owned by a Sikh man, but all the Pakistanis hung out there.
In Sindh Punjab restaurant, for others who don't know, is in Dubai, is in a suburb of Dubai called Karama, which was essentially a suburb that was, of course, expat heavy, but also very expat blue collar.
And I think they recently celebrated 42 years, 43 years. I didn't know cricket was a thing until 1985. Can I just be honest? I just did not know it existed as a thing. And my dad tells me this memory when he was in college. My dad was born in 1950, so I'm assuming late 60s. My dad went to Trivandrum for the first time with he went to St. Thomas College in Thrissur. My dad went to Trivandrum for the first time on a study tour. He says, they went in this college bus. They got outside because they were going to see this college. And they saw this bunch of guys wearing whites standing in the sports field doing nothing. Okay. And my dad was like, why are you guys not doing anything? They said, no, we're playing a test match. He said, but there should be some physical activity. Two guys far away, they seem to be doing something. You're not doing anything. So my dad was like, what, you do this for 5 days? And in the 60s, late 60s, for my dad, cricket was a revelation. Like, he'd not seen anyone play cricket till that point. And remember, my dad was good enough at football that he was picked by Kerala police. Decided not to do it because of Naxalite assassinations of policemen in Kerala in the 70s. He was that good. So anyways, my dad comes to the Gulf. I grew up with no sense that there is a thing called cricket. I was always a football family. No one played it in school. No one played it outside. We didn't see any cricket. And then Sharjah happened. And like I said, you could go to Sindh Punjab, get tickets to watch the match. But figuring out how to watch it on TV at home was a huge challenge. Because was it on Sharjah TV? Was it on Dubai Channel 33? I have very vague memories of my dad fiddling with that antenna until he would get it correctly. And then correctly you would get that antenna, that 1 degree position. And then you would get the cricket tournament. And then all my dad's colleagues would come. And I've written about this. I mean, if you've read any of my Cricket Info columns, I've written how influential my dad's workplace colleagues were.
Mr. Kapatia and Premraj. Am I remembering correct?
That is exactly correct. Premraj Payyans Vellatingara from Kasargod was my dad's fellow Malayali in the office. And CK Kapadia was my dad's was the chartered accountant. He was the only chartered accountant. My dad is a BSc botany who, in typical Mallu in the Gulf, became head of all finance. So CK Kapadia and Premraj Kapadia and they used to call my dad VTS, Vadukut Thomas Sunny, VTS. They were the cricket headquarters in this big local owned company. Premraj was a big cricket fan. Kapadia was he's a Gujarati from Bombay, right? Massive cricket fan, but also massive LK Advani fan. But this is in the late 80s, early 90s. This is before BJP had achieved product market fit in India, right? So he was a very proto Advani fan. And they would go mental about cricket. And can we use bad language in this podcast?
Yeah, go
or
ahead.
can I speak in Tamil? Okay, anyway, so
what's the difference? Okay, sorry. Shit.
so I would call my dad in office. Like we'd call him every day before school, after school. Rite of passage. Gulf kids call their parents all the time in office. The switchboard guy knew who was your dad and stuff. I would call my dad, and I could hear Premraj and Kapadia screaming about the India-Pakistan match. Okay, and the operative word was Kapil Dev Sala Gandu, Gandu Sala Kapil Dev, constantly. Okay. Constantly, this is the refrain I would hear. And I was like, my dad is like, I have no idea what's up with these guys. Some stupid cricket match is going on. And then the Rothmans Cup happens. And then the Australasia Cup happens. And then the Indo-Pakistan match, the Friday Indo-Pakistan match sequence starts. And suddenly, by the mid-80s, everyone is on cricket. And Kapadia and Premraj would come to my house. My mom would cook for everybody. And we would all get together with families, with everybody. A lot of bachelors could not afford TVs. A lot of bachelor Mallus had very low-paying jobs in the Gulf. So we'd have an open house on cricket match day. And the house would be just full of people watching, including Pakistanis. So we'd have Pakistanis, we'd have Indians, all of these people together. Unbelievable abuse, screaming across the living room against each other. And it was just the most wonderful memories. I have just the best memories of cricket in Sharjah. And then in the late 80s, we started playing cricket and outside in parking lots. And the tape tennis ball became the ball. Like, there were legendary guys in our school who could tape tennis balls perfectly. It was a skill to be able to put PVC tape on tennis balls. And cricket took off and it was highly frowned upon. We'd get chased away by policemen from parking lots, but the footballers could stay, right? But the Indians and Pakistanis who play cricket would get chased away. They would literally blare the sirens at us. It was just the most amazing discovery of a sport. Suddenly, when you're like 8 or 9 years old, with no background, and I didn't know anything. I remember LBW just completely frazzled me for many years. I just didn't understand what was going on. And my dad was like, "Oh, he's LBW." I was like, "Explain." I don't know, but everyone else is shouting. You know what I mean? So yeah. Anyway, I could go on, and then Sultan Zarawani, and then UAE qualifies for the Cricket World Cup. That was a brief period when they actually allowed you to play cricket outside. For a brief period, it was not frowned upon. You could play outside. And then they actually saw Zarawani play cricket, and then immediately they started chasing us away from parking lots again. But yeah, it was the most. And then 1990 World Cup happened. My mom passed away, so I had to go to boarding school in Kerala. And for all of these emotional reasons, the 92 World Cup is very close to my heart. Anyway, that's a long kind of ramble on growing up with cricket. It was so interesting, man. Every tournament, Noor Jahan concert, right? And the match would happen. And if it was a Friday match, right after that, Channel 33 would put the weekly Hindi film. Would happen right after that. So you'd see a slightly out-of-date Amitabh Bachchan film, or you'd see Mary Jung, or they'd put a pot boiler right after that. And then the family would gently go back to sleep on a Friday night after the weekend.
A lot of what Sidin is saying, like I can go on for like 20-30 minutes just like telling like different versions of the story in the Gulf, but a lot of this like rings very, very true. This is exactly how it was. And I think the real big difference, I mean, at least when people say in India, they're like, oh, we also used to watch cricket, you also used to watch. You're like, yes, you did. But the difference wasn't that after you watched an India-Pakistan match where India gets thrashed by Pakistan, you would then go out in the evening or go out the next morning and meet Pakistanis who would laugh at you and jibe at you and basically remind you, oh, once again, you guys have lost. But of course, the good thing was that both of us together used to make fun of Bangladeshis who had never had a cricket game. So that was fun.
Oh, man, yeah.
Still remains true to this day.
Yeah. And there's no point in making fun of the Sri Lankans because, man, they don't care, man.
Exactly. That's exactly
They're like the island desis, right? The rare, like, they're so chilled out. They didn't care. They were like, we don't care, man.
Yeah, and all of this
we
is
have
true.
Other stuff to worry about.
And all of this is true about the police chasing you down because you couldn't get time to play, and if you played cricket during the time of the prayers, that would be another time. So you would have to actually, people do tea break and lunch break now. We had to do prayer breaks, okay, because we had to we couldn't play at that time because we would get chased away if we played around that time. So we had to stop. And all the pitches were on roads. So everything, people would pretend, okay, we are doing spin bowling and swing bowling. There's no swing, there's no spin. You're playing on literally a road. There is a road that you're playing on. In the school, the pitch was concrete. It was made of concrete. Okay, that is where you would play cricket.
It's like the actual Rajkot stadium, but
Sidin, before you tell us about Sultan Saravani for our off-take for our upcoming true crime podcast, can you briefly tell us about your interaction with Sukumara Kurup and how he was your neighbor or something?
Yeah, okay. So remember, my dad went in 1972. So the UAE became a country in 1970. And when my dad went in 72, there were still border checks between Dubai, Abu Dhabi, and so on. It wasn't the seamless country it is today. Dubai had, even to this day, right, there's lots of different. It was a very different country, my friends. Abu Dhabi airport was one building with a jeep outside. Dubai had the major airport. The guy who ran the fire force in Abu Dhabi was a Malayali who was called, I joke not, Fire John. His name was Fire John because he was a Malayali called John. He was in charge of fire. They called him Fire John. Okay. And my dad knew Fire John. I mean, the community was so small that virtually every Malayali, every kind of broadly, if you are from the Thrissur central area, everybody knew everybody else. So everybody kind of literally knew everybody else in the Gulf in the 70s. Even though there were all, thousands of Malayalis there, it was not uncommon for all of them to know each other fairly. And they're all bachelors. None of them had their families. 10 of them would share a flat, right? Or live or work in a labor camp, which sounds horrible, but they lived in dormitories together. My dad got married, I think, in 76. And he was lucky enough to have a job which paid him enough that he could bring my mum over. So my mum went just before I was born, and then she came back for my delivery. So when my mum was, I think, the late 70s, so I'm thinking 77, 78, when I was but a twinkle in my dad's voracious eye, one of our family friends was a guy called Sukumara Kurupa. Okay. We knew him. My dad knew him as this very charismatic guy who'd come in once every couple of weeks. They would play rummy together. They'd have a few drinks. And my dad, again, was lucky enough to be paid well enough. Let me just acknowledge here, not merit, pure luck. To have money enough to get a liquor license, right? So my dad could go to Spinneys or to one of the licensed liquor shops in Abu Dhabi and buy liquor. Not everyone couldn't go. You had a license, and my dad could buy alcohol, because if you traveled in a taxi with alcohol, they caught you and you didn't have a liquor license, you're gone. They could put you in prison for a very long time. So all the bachelors would come, and Sukumara Kurpu was one of these guys. Sukumaran. They used to call him Sukumaran, I think. Handsome, charismatic, worked for a local company. Sukumaran's sister was also in Abu Dhabi at the time. She used to be a cashier at Spinneys, which was one of these pork selling, alcohol selling, special license British shops in Abu Dhabi. So, and my dad used to tell me, Sukumara Kuruk came once a week. He said, no, I'm going back to India on holiday. They played cards. I think my mom made mutton biryani. My dad has very clear memories of this. And then Sukumara Kuruk goes to India on leave, right? Back in the day when flights were so expensive that you went on leave maybe once every 2 years. Very expensive to go. And Sukumara Kurpu goes, and my mom is carrying me. So I am in Delhi at this point. I am in the process of presenting myself. And the next thing I know, or next thing my dad knows, Sukumara Kurpu is a wanted man because he has murdered somebody in Kerala. He has killed somebody, burnt their body in a car. The idea is to do an insurance fraud. So the idea is Sukumara Kurpu has died in a car accident, so his family will get the money. What Kurup actually does is he drives around one evening with some accomplices, finds a guy, kills him, puts him in the car, sets fire to the car. And the idea is hopefully police will think it is Sukumara Kurup and his family can take the money. Utterly flabbergasted. Like the entire Abu Dhabi gang is utterly flabbergasted by the sequence of events. And eventually Kurupu becomes one of India's most wanted people, is believed to have run away to Saudi Arabia at some point. Very quickly after that, I think when in the late 80s or mid 80s, there was a movie called NH47, which was a film adaptation, the first film adaptation of the Sukumara Kurupu crimes. And I remember bizarrely sitting at home and watching it with my dad. And my dad is like, I used to know that guy. He came and saw your mum when you were in stomach. The most bizarre story. There's a new movie now, I think, which has come out with Dulquer Salman, Mammootty's son. And I don't think to this day they found him ever. The theory is that he died of old age in Saudi Arabia, but he remains maybe Kerala's most famous fugitive, is Sukumara Kurupu. So yeah, so was a family friend. like almost everybody in the Gulf at that point.
It was such a 0 to 100 story. Like, okay, like seems like a decent person. Whatever. Went to tried what murdered someone for like insurance. Like it. I did not expect that escalation. I expected an escalation, sure, but all the stat padding of like what like a normal person this is. Oh, like no has come over, eaten like.
Yeah, he was just playing cards with my dad.
Only for
I know,
Malayalis,
yeah.
this is like a story of from rummy to dummy. Like if you know that reference.
And we're going to jump very quickly to 1996 World Cup. But before that, I thought I'll just quickly talk about India in Sharjah, India, Pakistan, Sharjah. So I just ran through the stats. India played Sharjah, I think, nearly like 27 times between 84 all the way up to 2006. And this includes Sharjah, and I think it includes a couple of matches in Abu Dhabi and Dubai as well. And of this, India won the first two matches in Sharjah, which is in the 84-85, which is, as Sidin mentioned, just after the World Cup. And after that, they never won until 1991. And then they never won again until one game in 1996. And then the next game they won was in like 2000. So in between, between these wins, Pakistan had like nearly 10 wins.
You mean against
sandwiched between them.
Pakistan, basically?
Against Pakistan. These are just games against Pakistan. So it's almost like India wins, Pakistan wins 10 times, India wins, Pakistan wins 7 times, and India wins, then Pakistan wins 3-4 times. This was what Sharjah was like. And I'm going to jump to the 996.
Interestingly, there you mean 92, which is also the between these Sharjahs where India was losing to Pakistan. Were interspersed World Cup matches where India was constantly beating Pakistan. The first of which was in 1992, right?
Which is why there was a strong local lore, legend, etc. about Pakistan being unbeatable in Sharjah. And of course, it was connected
On a Friday.
to...
PGK on a Friday. Do you remember that? The Friday legend, yeah.
My only question is, since you two have been there, like my illusion shattering moment for Sharjah was when I saw Tewatia just smash Cottrell around 2 years ago. Like, wow, the stadium's tiny, right? Did you all find the stadium tiny? Like,
PGK, can I take a minute to tell you about this?
Please.
Okay, so Kaustubh, do you know what? Do you know the kind of competitions they used to run in the stadium in the late 80s, early 90s during the match? They used to put boards behind, right, on either end of the pitch. They used to put a board right behind the wicketkeeper on the boundary and a board right in front. And if the batsman would hit the board, you'd get 100 dirhams.
Exactly.
Oh, wow.
Right?
Yeah.
You used to get 100 dirhams. They would actually give batsmen the incentive to do what you like, devoid of team purpose, and give you cash prizes for it.
This is like T20s from like the 80s.
And it was entirely normal. I mean, I won't call it the Wild West, but it was such an innocent time. And PGK, I don't know if you remember when the initial tournament started, because I remember going to the Sharjah Stadium before they finished building all the stands around it, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you could just walk up to the pitch, like there's nothing. You park your car and walk up. And the boundary was a line of prefab concrete bricks painted in white. Concrete bricks. Okay. And then obviously they realized that, these guys are going to dive and go headfirst. Not that India did much headfirst diving into anything at that point in time, but still, I mean, they replaced it with little wooden blocks and stuff. And they would give cricketers all of these things. You hit this, we'll give you 100 dirhams. Every time you hit this, 1,000 dirhams. You hit that, you get an Audi car. And guys would do it.
But also, like, the funding was one of the major reasons why Sharjah cricket came to be in the first place, right? There was something called the Cricketers Benefit Fund or something like that?
Series, yeah. CBFS, the CBFS series.
What was that about?
An excuse to do cricket in Sharjah, essentially.
Which was that players would get paid for showing up or something like that.
All the idea was a lot of the money they raised, they could then give back to players and stuff. I mean, it's basically a nicely packaged excuse for why all this money was sloshing around. And, and the funny thing was, this was before global, you had global advertising, right?
Yeah.
So the Sharjah tournament would weirdly have brands that were relevant only to the Gulf. So you'd have Al Kabir frozen food, you'd have Rafa video, you'd have Thomas Cook travel. Yeah, it was Postman ghee. You'd have these. It was just interesting. It was an interesting kind of very pre-global. I think the 92 World Cup for me is like the first kind of real globalized cricket tournament in some sense.
And a lot of foreign exchange. Thomas Cook Rosmani. I think those are the ads that you would see all around there.
Kanu Group.
Yes, Kanu Group.
There's so many brands I remember, PGK and Sidin. I think for you guys it would have been really normal, right? Khalij Times is in my head. Kitply, Kitcall, the Six competition. It's
Kitply
like
is
all
my
of that
head,
stuff is, so many brands from that time.
But it's interesting we're talking about advertising because it's a great segue into the 1996 World Cup because which is also the World Cup. So 2-3 things happen in the 1996 World Cup, and I really recommend this amazing book by Mike Marcosi, which is just about what the 1996 World Cup did and how it transformed and commercialized cricket in a way that we never went back to. And because, of course, everyone knows it was set in India, Pakistan, and Sri Lanka. And at that point in time, the ads really came in like Coke, Pepsi. It was this big extravaganza. But it was also extremely special because for the first time, the United Arab Emirates ended up in the World Cup.
Yeah,
Now-
so sorry, PGK. Just before that, I mean, I think we need to give a huge shout out to 81 All Out who brought
Yes.
out this book, because
Absolutely.
I remember you recommending this a couple of years ago, and we actually checked the price on Amazon, and it was 11,534 for a paperback. I got mine through a friend of mine in the UK for 2,000 rupees after 81 All Out launched it. But now it's available on Amazon for India as well at a much cheaper price. I think it's around 500 rupees or so. So go pick yourself
For
a
more
copy.
context, the rights of the book essentially lapsed and the book practically went out of print, and Mike Marcosi passed away several years ago. And 81 All Out, which is a cricket podcast with serious cricket people who are cricket experts who know what they're talking about. If you don't want to hear banter and you want to hear actual experts, please listen to 81 All Out. It's a phenomenal podcast. They got the rights and they just republished the book, and it's available now on Amazon, at least the e-version, and I think in parts of India, including Bangalore, you can get the physical copy as well. So really recommend, please listen to 81 All Out. Coming back to the 1996 World Cup, the UAE cricket team makes it to the 1996 World Cup, and I can tell you, as someone who was from the UAE, living in the UAE, it felt like you had two home teams in the cup. Of course, there was India, and this was a time when Tendulkar had just broken in, and of course, he was there in 1992 World Cup, but 96 was where it felt like it was his moment. It was hosted in India. We felt that India was in a great place, and then suddenly, as an added bonus, the UAE cricket team comes in as well. And I'm now going to ask Sidin to tell us about the UAE cricket team and what that was like, watching them play.
It was utterly thrilling. I mean, I cannot lie about this. It seemed like the most wonderful culmination of stuff. 1990, they went into the World Cup, Football World Cup, played really well. I remember watching. My mum would stay up with me and watch throughout that World Cup. She literally passed away halfway during that World Cup, and then, I mean, I've written about this before. She passes away halfway through the World Cup, and then the rest of the World Cup I have to see by myself with my dad. And then 1996, they qualify for, and it started off as a joke. You know what I mean? They're like, hey, they're going to lose everything. What's the point? I mean, so the UAE went in, and it was the one thing is people kind of forget the UAE had a really thriving domestic cricket culture right through the 80s. PGK, I don't know if you remember, but if you could wake up on the morning, especially on a weekend, open the Khaleej Times or the Gulf News, two major papers. So you read one of these two newspapers, and they'd have an entire page of domestic cricket results. There were so many. In fact, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, they had 3 tiers of local cricket.
Yeah, they had several tiers. I don't know if it was 3, but they definitely had several tiers. And it took up like almost half a page or 1 page of the results that was there.
So my dad's company had Bin Hamuda Trading and General Services had a team in Dubai. And every time they had a match, they had two guys in Abu Dhabi who were good enough to play. Dubai was always cooler than Abu Dhabi. We had 2 guys in Abu Dhabi who were good enough to play. They traveled to Dubai for those matches. They had a lot of fairly good Ranji Trophy level guys who then get work in the Gulf and go there. And all of them would end up playing and becoming really good. And then because of the very convenient way in which nationality and representation is managed in cricket, all of them just played for the UAE team. The one exception, the one Emirati who played was a right arm leg spinner, right?
A right arm leg spinner and a middle order batsman.
A suicidal middle order batsman named Sultan Zarawani, who came in from nowhere and kind of vanished for a long time. I think before he came back as an administrator or something like that.
And sorry, Sultan is not his name; it's his actual title, right? He's a real Sultan. Yeah.
Sultan, but without the crown. So yeah, we'll get to that.
Lakab or whatever it's called. So yeah, I mean, it was thrilling, exactly like PGK said. It was like having 2 teams in the World Cup. It was totally like having 2 teams in the World Cup. Even when India played the UAE and Zarawani took Sachin's wicket, correct?
Yes. It would have been his moment, apart from the moment that we're going to get to very quickly. But his original moment was he bowled a leg spin to Tendulkar. And I kid you not, it was probably one of the, it just outfoxed him completely. Just pitches on leg, goes past him, takes the outside edge and goes to the wicketkeeper. Everybody is surprised, including Sachin. And that's his first wicket. And if I'm not wrong, it remains his only wicket. Sultan
It's a
Zarwani.
classic Sachin dismissal, though. Like, this is the kind of
Yes.
guy he used to get used out to. Michael won and a bunch of others.
And if I remember, this was a prep game before the World Cup, right? Because
Yes.
India and UAE were in different groups in the World
That's
Cup.
right.
So I think this
That's
is
right.
a prep game.
That's right. I remember the game was in whites also. They didn't even wear colors. It was in whites. They were in whites. And
Legendary game. And then UAE had this dashing kind of cigarette ash color uniform, kind of grayish.
Cement color.
I will
Yeah.
never forget. I mean, you can laugh at it, man. It is seared in my memory. The falcon on the logo, seared into my memory. It's hugely emotional. I mean, say anything you want about contemporary politics, but when the UAE does something, all the childhood memories of singing Imarat in stadiums and in front of football, it all just comes back to me. Hugely emotional. You just identify. It's very hard to not get that emotion. Even now when they play cricket and stuff, occasionally when you see them winning something, sure, who's playing for them? Mailvahanan, right? There's a Ganesh Mailvahanan who used to play
Yep.
for them,
Yep.
who was a very, very good player. I mean,
Yeah.
he was a fairly high quality Indian player.
I think we all remember, the rest of us remember UAE in that World Cup because Gary Kirsten scored 188, I think, not out, which is like the highest score for a long time.
You know, Johan Samarasekera was actually a really good bowler. I mean, he actually bowled reasonably well in that World Cup.
That's true. I'm going to quickly jump to the moment that everyone remembers poor Sultan Zarwani for. What happens?
Okay, I think UAE are chasing a pretty steep target against South Africa, and they have a top order collapse, as it tends to happen at World Cups. I think the score was under 70 and for the loss of 6 wickets when the captain Sultan Zarwani walks in, and there's still Alan Donald and the entire South African pace attack.
We should just
Spanish
say
Blues
at this point for young listeners that Alan Donald at this point was called White Lightning, right? And
and you know the rest.
yeah, not just for the sunscreen across his lips, but do go on, Srinath.
So Alan Donald is pretty much top 2 or 3 feared quicks, along with the likes of Ambrose and Waqar at that time, and Sultan Zarwani, who's the captain, who Sidin and PGK have so colorfully described so far. Literally, the Sultan, the prince from the UAE of Emirati origin, walks in without wearing a helmet to face up to Alan Donald. I think at this point, it's only fair I hand over to Sidin to describe what happens next.
I have such memories of seeing it live because I think it was in Rawalpindi. I think this is the match in which Kirsten destroyed the UAE, right? I mean, they scored some over 300 and something runs.
Yeah.
This was still early enough for 300 to be an impressive total. The sex appeal of a 300 score would rapidly diminish, I think, in the years to come after that. But this was like a truly stunning 300 score. No one took it seriously. Alan Donald is bowling, and Zarwani decides to come in just wearing a floppy hat. Okay, you do not come in wearing a floppy hat when Alan Donald is bowling at this point in time. Because, again, remember I said about how the West Indies just seemed undaunted, just impossible to defeat them. They seemed like, Alan Donald was bowling like that. You're like, how would anyone bat against? Like, I remember if India had to play South Africa around this time, I would sit up in bed thinking, what if everyone got out for duck? Everyone has thought this, right? Everyone has thought this. This has gone through everybody's mind. When Alan Donald was at his peak, what if we lose 6 people for 0 runs in the first over? Right? This is how Alan Donald is bowling. And this guy goes in wearing a floppy hat. And remember, Gavaskar did play fast bowlers wearing a slightly less floppy hat. But the problem is, Zarwani was not Gavaskar. This was the core problem. He was a very mediocre leg spin. Very clearly a guy who'd learned leg spin bowling via correspondence course. Yeah, through YouTube, 100%. And who'd I've never learned batting at all, right? Very clearly did not know batting. He goes in, and people forget, the South Africans lost their minds when he went in wearing a floppy hat. They got really upset, right? They had a huddle. They were like, what do we do? And Alan Donald was like, dude, very famously, John T. Rhodes goes to them and says, dude, this guy doesn't know what cricket is, okay? He's just essentially, they've put in one local guy there. He's promised his team members that if they win a match, I'll give everyone a Mercedes-Benz. Please don't kill the guy, okay? And I think Alan Donald very, very, very shrewdly blames Pat Simcox. Simcox was like, no, kill him. Kill the guy. Right? Bowl a bouncer, scare him, bowl it over his head or whatever, and
So Alan Donald's options at this point are kill or don't kill, right? Like there's no third option. Like just pull it and like no.
Very, very, very 21st century Vladimir Putin. It's very that level. It's very uncompromising. There is no middle ground over there. There is no Goldilocks zone. Okay. So and Alan Donald, like, I find it really funny how Donald remembers this. He's like, no, I said like, no, I will let the guy go. Let's be careful. He doesn't know anything. Simcox comes and says, kill him. And Alan is like, okay, fine, I'll kill him. Okay. So Donald goes in, textbook Yorker, right? Textbook, kill the guy. He should never, like, Yorker. Zarawani, unfortunately, is not in possession of above mentioned textbook. It hits his head straight on. PGK, you could hear this, right? On the
Yeah,
thing?
you could. And he just like stumbles away, and for like a brief 3 seconds you are terrified as a viewer, because it hits his head and he just walks away like completely like dizzy and like this thing, and then you're like, oh god, what happened?
And his hat falls off.
And his hat falls off.
It's the kind of example Sunny Gavaskar uses even today to say you don't need concussion tests. Like, people used to get by without all this. Sultan Zarawani, that brave soul. Remember that?
Sunil, I don't think that's as good an example as you think it is, Sunil. Because Zarawani stumbles away. And South Africa do that thing which they used to do a lot more in cricket. I think they do less now, which is they act as if they are concerned. Right? This was how it was in cricket. It's only very recently, after all the tragedy that's happened, that people actually seriously go and check. Back in the past, they'd use this, hello, is everything okay? Okay. Fine. And they did go back, right? So they go and check him. And he's gone. And he lasts for what? Six
more balls.
Yeah. I think
6 more balls.
Yeah, 6 more balls. And he's gone. And man, it is one of, again, abiding memory of the 1996 World Cup. The other memory being, I don't know if anybody remembers, the car crash of an opening ceremony. Does anybody remember that?
You should remind us. I remember that, but you should go on.
So, okay.
Does
very
this have
quickly,
like a
right?
Miss Universe or Miss World or something to it?
No, I don't. All I remember is they decided to spend a lot of money and do a light and sound show type thing, where they would they suspended a ring over the center of the pitch, and they would put a curtain around the ring, and they would project images onto the curtain, right? So they could do like a panoramic kind of light and sound, where this curtain would be the thing. Bombay, I think it's in Bombay. I think the opening ceremony is in Bombay. Please correct me if I'm wrong. And it is the windiest possible day. So you have the curtain is doing disco dance hanging from this thing. No one can see anything that is being displayed onto anything. It's essentially just abstract art at some point. And then somebody decides, okay, this is not working. No one can see anything. Quietly switch it off before it becomes a big embarrassment. Little did we know that we were seeing in 1996 what would be perfected in 2010 for the Commonwealth Games, when multiple systems would fail at that point. But man, it was so, I remember this proto attempt to do light and sound. Very valiant attempt to do light and sound at the 19. And there was a really nice ceremony. Do you remember? Flags, all the captains came on board.
Yeah.
They did a
very
really
Olympics-like. Yeah.
Very Olympics-like. They did a very
Olympics-like.
interesting kind of light and sound, virtual. Yeah. They tried to do... Yeah, it was very interesting. Very interesting. It was really the first disco dance World Cup, with the loudest beat being Zarawani's head.
Last thing about growing up with cricket in the UAE is about this wonderful chant that happens in Sharjah cricket grounds that Sidin has written about. And I'm going to throw it to Sidin to talk about this.
I'm really happy to be on the last episode of this podcast. So this is, my dad is responsible for this. However, there's a great, when you're a journalist and you write stuff, you want to get paid for it. Ideally, you want to get, that's number one goal. Number two goal is people remember this. It has some influence somewhere. And 99% of journalists, 99% of what they write, nobody cares for. And the remaining 1% people care for because there are factual mistakes or there is plagiarism. So the vast majority of the time, you get no reward for what you're writing. So anyway, so the story starts with, this is my dad in his late 80s phase when he still does not understand what the heck Kapadia and Premraj is talking about during cricket matches, right? So they would come home and you could hear audio, you could hear everything happening in the stadium. On the TV in those days, like you could hear people speaking, all of this very, very low tech, and you could hear the desis. This is before we got many more sophisticated chants. This was all very jeetega by jeetega, either Pakistan jeetega or India jeetega, right? I mean, it was always basically only had those 2 or 3 chants. And my dad would get really annoyed because Kapadia and Premraj would sit in my living room and scream out these. And my dad is like, dude, there's only like 3 adults and a child here. They can't hear you in the fucking TV. Why are you screaming? Stop it. Okay. And my dad would get really annoyed. And at which point, one day he was like, this is after India had lost to Pakistan. Okay. I remember this. my dad is very good when he gets outraged. He was like, "What happened now? You're bloody Jitendra by Jitendra. What happened now? All gone, all finished, all gone, all waste of my time, my electricity money waste, my cooking waste, my food waste. Go home, bloody fools." Okay.
Jitendra indeed.
Okay. So, and the thing is, not entirely senseless, because this is one of the period when Jitendra would actually be in the stadium with assorted members of Pakistani intelligence, I guess, watching these matches. So every time for years after that, everyone would keep screaming Jitendra by Jitendra for this. I wrote about this once, and I kid you not, around 7 or 8 years ago, at I think an India-England one ODI in Lords or Oval in London, a bunch of guys sang that song. Okay, clearly engineering cricket for column reading guys, and I heard it on TV, and it is by far the most success I've achieved in any form. As cricketers say, my most successful moment in any format.
Across formats.
Across formats, yeah.
And the only other time this has happened to me is I wrote an article about trying to follow the India-Pakistan match, and I had to follow this match in Switzerland because I was traveling on work. And a bunch of us Indians managed to use.
That's a beautiful article, by the way. I really like that article. But
I remember this. I was staying. I'd gone for a trade show this was when I used to cover the Swiss watch industry as a journalist. But I traveled to Switzerland. I was staying in this godforsaken village somewhere in a spa because I didn't get hotel rooms. It was too expensive. I was on expense. And then a bunch of us Indians sat and saw a pirated stream of this game in a McDonald's in Basel. People lost their minds. They're like, "What the heck? Why are these mysterious brown people watching a stream and vaguely chanting religious lines?" You know what I mean? It was all the Swiss were losing their minds about it. And then I wrote an article immediately. I filed an article for Cricinfo when I was there. And then I came to London. I came back home 2 days later. And I was traveling through customs. And a Desi guy was checking my passport. And he was like, "Oh, I went to Switzerland. Did you see the cricket?" I said, "Yeah, I saw the cricket." He was like, "This guy wrote this really interesting article on Cricinfo about watching this in Switzerland. Did you meet this guy?" And I was like, "What? Somebody reads my cricket besides the guy who edits it." So yeah, it was.
At that point, did you own up to it, or like did you slyly slide away?
Yeah, come on, validation as an Indian journalist, 100% own up to it. I own up to articles that Samant Subramaniam has written. What articles I have written? So I have zero problems with. So those are two. But Jitendra by Jitendra, it is again happy to have contributed it to the sophisticated world of Indian cricket. Thanks, Dad.
One of the segments that Nitin Sundar proposed on our last episode is this segment called Titan Watch, which is where we follow the Gujarat Titans. PG gave something around metaverse for the Gujarat Titans.
I think we should definitely talk about Gujarat Titans. That's exactly where I was getting to now. I'm going to throw it to Kaus, because Kaus literally on the WhatsApp group can't speak of anything else. He's still in stunned silence after watching the Gujarat Titans reveal.
Wait, this entire Zoom call is happening on a metaverse as far as I'm concerned. I don't know how to describe what I saw. First thing I had to describe it, right? Because it's a podcast and I can't just be like, bro, my mind is blown. For one thing, it's a logo reveal, and the logo looks like it is something that someone would have done on word art. Okay, it's not. It's not too elaborate. It's not too fancy. I mean, the bar is underground if you're comparing it to the logos that you have compared before.
To be fair, it's better than Lucknow Super Giants. So
it still looks like a Tamil election poster with two guys on either side holding the logo.
Which Ashok Krish did ironically on doing Jalsa and showing Jilpa. But yeah.
So I didn't try this live, but they had this link that I had put out on their Twitter that said something like, join this link and we will reveal the logo soon. So when I joined there, it's basically a 4x4 kind of 3D room with your avatar, just torso and above. Okay, you have no feet. Okay, and you can walk around looking at random paraphernalia on the wall, and the paraphernalia on the wall is only Narendra Modi Stadium. Okay, photos of that, because they can't. This is the build up to the logo reveal. Entirely empty. There's one random dais on stage. Whatever. It's very bizarre. I missed the reveal, and then I see the video later. Turns out these three torsos are standing in front of a desk, and it does not look like Hardik Pandya, Nehra, or Shubman Gill, because I don't know if any of you guys played cricket, EA Cricket 2004 or 2003 or whatever, right? so like the graphics there were so bad that like they were like Tendulkar had a random mustache. I like forget the name problems, okay?
A.
Because he'll get the
Naharam
copyright
is in the video.
D. Denier.
Denier.
Gautam Gemphier. I remember the names, but like, forget that. But I remember very vividly that none of the faces made sense. Okay, like they had literally superimposed photos on it. They have pre-recorded speeches from Nehra and Pandya and Gill talking about what this logo means to them. This whole thing could have been like a tweet. It's like one of those things that like this meeting could have been in email types. This literally could have just been, hey, hello, this is our logo, check it out. That's it. No, they had to make this whole show about it doing this in the metaverse. So they do this. I don't even remember what Nehra and Pandya said because
I don't think they remember. It's okay. Go on.
So yeah, and the logo, we had to turn around. Okay, the camera pans around after looking at these three guys talk for a bit, and then the logo is revealed. Then there is this silence, okay, for like 30 seconds while these three torsos find their way to come in front of the camera, and then they just turn around. Okay, it feels like something I'm watching, like The Conjuring or something. Okay, it's like a horror trick where all the eyes are looking at you and like you don't know where to look. And it's all quiet. It's 30 seconds of just silence. And then achanak se dhol music starts in the back. To show that no, this is Gujarat. It doesn't matter that it literally says Gujarat Titans on the logo. So I know it's a Gujarat. No, dhol starts.
And they make references to patang flying in the sky and stuff like that just to
Patang mera kat gaya hai. Ye dekh ke I'm like that happens, and then again there's like 10 seconds of lag, okay, because I think they're dancing, okay, to the camera, but the camera is not rendering quick enough, okay, so there's like 10 seconds of lag, and then this awkward off time dancing happens with just arms, okay, no legs, and slowly they we will see you in the stadium or whatever, and then end scene. Like,
I was saying just before this podcast recording that Gujaratis are famously meat averse, and ye to sab
Oh my God.
Yeah. Sidin actually unmuted to express his disgust.
Yes, I did. Yeah, that's very bad. That's very bad. No, I know why my family is so rarely at home. The man that looks so much like Gujarat Toblerones. It looks exactly like Gujarat Toblerones. Number one, right?
They've not even done the 3D render correctly. Like the logo is twirling, okay. It has not been done properly. Like the edges are not cut properly. Like I walked into it to see what's happening there because I could. It's a metaverse, right? I can go wherever I want. I walked into it. It's not been rendered well even there. Like they've done. This is so like haphazardly put together with like duct tape. It's. I know it was hilarious, but like it was.
It is really bad. I saw some of it. Second, I'm really looking forward to people constantly pronouncing it as Titans. This I am very, very eagerly looking forward to this because it is inevitable, and this will happen in your houses, my friends, and you will not be able to laugh because it will be inappropriate. Enduru Titana lavane, avan bhayangara Titana to. This is going to be a problem. Number 2. Number 3. Why does the metaverse look so shit, man? Has anyone seen a non-shit metaverse? It is so bad. It's like designers. There's a bunch of designers who became unemployed in the early 2000s and are so cheap right now that people are like, come back, guys. Come back. It looks like you're playing Doom. It's so bad. Final bonus point. I did my BE in metallurgical engineering from REC Trichy. And the course is called Meta. Because apparently it's too difficult to pronounce the rest of this fairly short word. Yeah, so everyone says, so we're all very proud of being Meta. Because being Meta used to mean fairly chilled out course. Placements were not generally a problem because we're very low price. And our academic, we are totally into extracurricular activities. Facebook has fucking ruined it now. Because now when we go and tell people, hey, we are Meta from REC Trichy, they are like, please go away. Do not want to talk to you. Why do you have both your legs and both your arms? Some part of you has to be missing. So it's really bad. So yeah, thank you, Meta in general and Gujarat Titans in particular.
Yeah, I'm also actually from Meta, right? Which this trait both of us also share with Sundar Pichai. I'm guessing it was some slight tactical move from Mark Zuckerberg to make sure Sundar Pichai's entire past is blemished by renaming it Meta. So there you go.
I also wonder if there is a Tata division called Titan Gujarat, which just completely confuses everybody.
Yeah, this is like when I discovered that there was a team named Cincinnati Bengals, and I said KKR should immediately be renamed Bengal Cincinnati's or some shit like that. Right?
But it's okay, man. If somebody ever asks you guys and you feel that it's difficult to defend, you can always say you went to metallurgy, so it's fine.
Oh.
Oof,
Wait,
great
my
place to
uncle
end.
calls it metal allergy. Okay, hello.
Very good.
Anyway, carry on.
It has been a wonderful, wonderful experience. We'll obviously link to Sidin's best pieces in the show notes and anything else.
We
that you find
literally
about
have to
Sultan
do this
Saramani.
because I undertook a foolhardy endeavor this morning of going through all of Sidin's heavy ball episodes or pieces, and I realized there were Sidin. Do you know how many you've written in heavy ball?
I have no idea.
There are
You know how many
70 pieces. 70.
No way, really?
Yeah,
That is
I think you
insane.
can publish
I-
this as a book. Yeah.
I realized when I left Mint that I had written 1,000 articles for the paper in 12 years.
Wow. Okay. Yeah. No, 70.
And
70 still
man,
seems like
yeah,
doable,
70.
but like
Still, that's still a lot. That's still a lot for someone who watches no cricket.
yeah, and the
I mean, talk
first
about
one
grift.
is actually Sultan Saramani and that
Ah.
incident. So beautiful. Unless Cricinfo lost a bunch of archives, but that's the first one I saw.
No,
Brilliant.
thank you for going to the trouble of doing that.
Yeah, and actually, thank you for going through the trouble of doing that because it's there on your browser history now, so we can like link it directly. We didn't have to go search for it. But thank you so much. This has been just amazing, wonderful stuff. Talking about cricket in the 90s, cricket in the Gulf, all the way to cricket in the future, in the metaverse. So, from everyone else in the panel, say goodbye. And we'll be back next week with another amazing episode. Like, subscribe, tell your friends. And because Sidin will retweet this link, we will probably get maybe 14 listeners instead of the regular 7. So I think we're going to be really
But
great.
wait, we also have our first sponsored plug, which is that Sidin's looking to hire. Sidin, why don't you go for it?
Exactly. Please get. I work for a software company called, I work for a SaaS company called Clarisites.com. We're desperately looking to hire engineering people. Please apply. Please.
Jitendra by Jitendra. Come on.
Anyway, thank you so much for listening to me just go on and on about this nostalgic stuff like some kind of retired army uncle talking about the war for Bangladesh. So thank you so much for your patience, listeners, co-hosts. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye guys. See ya.
TV umpire to director, we have a player review. Can we rock and roll, please?